Today, I'm going to be doing a 50-50 workshop. First half is more of like a slide deck presentation style thing. Second half is building an app. So I'm going to be rushing through the beginning somewhat because we only have 30 minutes and we want to build 2 apps, or at least try to, and that's a lot going on, huh? Anyway, so we have $20,000 in Lens bounties, and if you were here for Andrew's presentation, 20,000 in Aave and Avara bounties. I'm sorry, 10,000. Oh, my bad. Okay. So 10,000 in Aave and 20,000 in Lens. The 20,000 in Lens is broken up into 2 parts. We have Smart Posts, which you'll learn about in just a moment. We have a new CLI that we've launched as of yesterday for building Smart Posts that can get you half the way there, literally. Andrew, to thank for actually that code boilerplate. And then we have 10,000 for just building Lens applications. So actually, those numbers are not right for the bottom part. I think it's like 3,000 or 3,500, 2,500, and 2,500. Anyway, total is 20,000. But if you want to learn the exact details of the bounties, go to the ETHGlobal website. Me and Andrew are going to be around, and we can answer any questions, by the way, if you're hacking on Lens. We can help you debug. We can help you write code. Whatever you need us to do, we'll be around off and on for the next 2 days. We'll probably be leaving around dinner time and coming back like late at night or like around 9 or something for a couple of hours. Anyway, so my name is Nader. I'm a developer working with Avara now as of yesterday, and Aave and Lens for over a year. And I've been a developer for about 11 years. If you want to have resources today to follow after this, this will take you to the developer documentation, the GitHub repo, our grants, where we have a grants program. We're launching a new set of grants next week for Smart Posts as well. So if you want to keep updated with all of that, then definitely check out these resources. So I'm going to talk about what Lens is, talk about some new V2 stuff, and then we're going to build an app. So for me, I think speaking to developers, the best way to explain Lens is that it's a protocol and a suite of tools and APIs for building social applications or building social features into existing applications. You may have heard me say this before, but I think it's a better explanation of what it actually is. The best way for me to explain it after understanding it much better and having worked in the serverless space for a while, it reminds me a lot of a serverless platform like Auth0 or Okta or even something like Twilio or even Lambda functions or Vercel, and that it kind of abstracts away a lot of infrastructure and allows you to focus on building a product and not dealing with building out a database, managing DevOps, and doing all of the back-end stuff. You as a developer focus on building the client-side application, web app, mobile app, and desktop app, whatever, and you don't have to worry about building the back end. And I think like this is a really interesting use case because social is something that everyone is already used to, and it's something that has proven itself to be a good entry point for people that are non-technical and just non-crypto. We've seen it with Orb, we've seen it with Favor, we've seen it with FriendTech, we've seen it with Farcaster. We've seen it with a lot of the social applications that have come out in the last year, that it's a lot easier for normie people to understand because they've already been using social applications. 5 billion people in the world. You don't have to explain what like some complicated DeFi thing is to them because they might not even care about that. But this is a good way to get them in the crypto space because they have to have a wallet, and a lot of the new applications are abstracting away even that. So they really just are just using an app, and that's ultimately where we want to be. So interesting in the whole social space is that not only are we seeing people in crypto building social that is decentralized, we're also seeing the 2 of the top 3 founders in history of social building decentralized social. So I think the top 3 really in terms of usage are going to be the Mark Zuckerberg, like you have Instagram, Facebook, and all the stuff they're doing, WhatsApp. You have Jack Dorsey with Twitter, Blue Sky, and Nostr, and then you have TikTok. So 2 of those 3, which would be the Zuckerberg and the Jack Dorsey group, are both now moving into the decentralized social space. Jack has been talking crap about Twitter for the last couple of years, and then helped launch Blue Sky and is now left to focus, like he's not actually a founder of Nostr, but he's essentially promoting it and involved in some way. I don't know exactly how he's involved. with Adam Mosseri. He's the head of both Instagram and now Threads. One of his first posts on Threads, after giving a talk at TED about the importance of building and the opportunities of building decentralized social on the blockchain, was him announcing that Threads is going to be a decentralized network as well. The infrastructure they're using is something called ActivityPub, which you've probably heard of if you've used anything that, I forgot the other, there's a couple of other social protocols that use ActivityPub, but it's kind of like a somewhat decentralized network that mimics some of the capabilities that we get with blockchains, the ability to support your social graph, censorship resistance to some extent. So I think it's really interesting and validating to see two of the biggest social founders in the history of the world pivoting and moving into like this direction, because it does, like blockchains and decentralized data and all of this stuff does bring a lot of really more important like capabilities that you just can't get with centralized databases. So it's really not only something that's being recognized by the blockchain community, but outside as well. And when you think about a social application, it's not just something like Facebook or Instagram. There's a lot of applications that just have social features that make the application better and more sticky for users. And for us here in this room, we might not think of GitHub as a social application, but when I use GitHub, I actually really love following the people that I'm interested in. And the most alpha, and this is alpha if you don't already know this, the most alpha you can possibly get in the whole world as a developer is following really, really, really talented people and just seeing what they're starring and what they're building, and then looking at your feed on a daily basis. It's almost like Hacker News is for coding. You know, you just get the most important stuff, and you're the first one to see it. So if someone that you follow stars a repo, or if they create a repo, it'll show up in your feed. That's a social feature. There's a lot of these little social features that are in applications that people don't really think of all the time. Even Stack Overflow and things like that have like social features. So being able to easily add this functionality is really powerful, and being able to kind of do it without a lot of work is one of the value propositions of not only Lens, but I think all of these Web3 social protocols like Farcaster and CyberConnect. Lens v2 was launched officially like in the last week or so. Here are a few of the new features or the new things that I'm going to call out. There's a lot of other stuff too. You can go to our website and learn more. One of them is a more standardized metadata set for not only basic publications like images and videos, but also for things like 3D and live streaming and minting and video and all these other things. This kind of enables more of a modular approach. If you don't want to buy into the entire Lens ecosystem, you can just tie into certain portions of the graph and be able to enable people to do different things like create a live streaming platform and be able to kind of aggregate that data and treat it more as a database, because you can now kind of have a decentralized database that is queryable and use it only as that if you choose to, and especially here soon once we go permissionless. Profiles are now not connected by both the identity and the handle. They're now kind of separated. So when you get a Lens profile now, it's more of like an ID, and then you can attach a handle to that. And we're going to see a lot more namespaces come out in the near future now that V2 is out. Right now, .lens is what everybody thinks of, but in the future, we're going to have a lot more of these, and this is going to offer a very powerful way for developers to also monetize their clients. Another big thing, and this is something we're focusing on over the next few months and at this hackathon, is smart posts. We have bounties specifically made for this. We have a new CLI that's been released yesterday where you can run one command and generate a full stack smart post project by running npx create smart posts. It's also documented in our website. And this just facilitates a smart contract call anywhere in a single transaction through a Lens client, through our API. And what this really enables is the ability to kind of like take things that are happening outside of Lens and then get distribution within Lens. And it doesn't take a lot of extra work once the smart post contract has been built. So a good example of this would be if you want to get distribution for an NFT collection, or maybe you want to get distribution for a voting that's happening in your DAO, and you want to kind of get it on the social graph, and you don't want people to have to like leave and get redirected and then sign in and all this stuff. Directly with the Lens app, you can basically call a smart contract. And with bridging, this now enables cross-chain as well. And we already have a couple of teams building cross-chain stuff here, and we'd love to see a lot more of it. So these are just some examples of what a smart post might look like. Joining a wait list, buying a ticket, minting something, voting, joining a DAO, interacting with an oracle, buying and selling tokens, whatever. We also have a new referral system that allows you to kind of specify n number of referrals that will enable people retweeting essentially to make portions of money off of a collect. So if I post something and I set the collect fee or something like that as $10, for example, and then I set a 25% referral, I can essentially specify how many people down the chain can earn off of that referral. So just by clicking a button and retweeting, I can earn money and I can enable more people to earn money as a developer. And then developers can also programmatically set referral fees for their own applications that will allow them to monetize as well. Another big one is the profile manager. This is a big ask for a lot of people for a long time. If you have a profile on a hardware wallet and you want to delegate to a hot wallet or just to a bunch of your friends or whoever, if you're a company, you want to have a bunch of people being able to manage your social, you can do that with profile manager. You just specify an address and you then have the ability to interact from that address, and then you can revoke that at any time. This is just an example of what that might look like. Okay, cool. So how does Lens work? The very base is a set of smart contracts deployed to Polygon along with another set of infrastructure that we call Momoka that is on Arweave. So anything on-chain goes on-chain and on Polygon unless it's a smart post on another network. And then anything that is just a comment or a post that doesn't need to be financialized is posted on Arweave. We also have SDKs and stuff like that to improve the developer experience. So a big part of the focus for us is developer experience. We have a GraphQL API. So if you've ever used any type of indexing like the graph, you've noticed that obviously it's a necessity for building any high quality front end for doing things like searching, querying, filtering that you can't get out of a smart contract typically. We just kind of do that for you and offer a really simple to use API endpoint. And I say simple, it's simple if you know GraphQL, but it's not that simple if you don't. And therefore, we've also created a React SDK, a JavaScript SDK that just kind of abstracts away a lot of the GraphQL stuff as well if you don't want to write GraphQL. For the UX, we have gasless transactions and also something we call a dispatcher, so the user doesn't have to sign transactions. So using that combination, when a user signs up for a Lens app, they authorize the dispatcher once, and then they don't have to sign any more transactions. So you're kind of getting the on-chain stuff without having to sign. And you probably saw also maybe not too long ago, Farcaster has launched some new thing with their app that does something similar as well. And I think like that's the future of all this stuff is where we're headed, is obviously we don't want people having to sign stuff. We don't want people having to pay for their transactions. I'm going to talk about some of the developer experience stuff in just a moment, but that's another focus that we're doing. But one of the things that was challenging and has been challenging for building out any type of non-financial application that can actually scale is the fact that databases scale and blockchains don't. At AWS, we had DynamoDB, which powered websites like Amazon.com. During Black Friday, would hit almost 100 million operations per second for that single application. But blockchains literally max out at a few thousand transactions per second. And even if a blockchain claims to do more scale than that, we haven't really actually seen that play out in practice. We're still at this point of getting beyond that is challenging. And obviously there's a lot of work being done to kind of make that a reality. Things like horizontal scaling that you're seeing with the modular blockchains and things like that are trying to address this. so that everyone's not sharing a limited compute resource, but instead we are now having like app chains and stuff, which will kind of help this, but there's still that main constraint that has to do with the fact that everything that you do needs to be globally distributed through that whole network for the following transaction to kind of happen. The state needs to have been updated, and therefore it's really, really challenging to get beyond a certain scale just due to physics. And that's really great and important for preventing like the double spin problem, which is the original use case for a blockchain. But we've gone beyond that. People are wanting to use blockchains for storing information. You don't necessarily actually care if your friend posted something across the world and you're posting something at the exact same time, whether your transaction finalizes before his or vice versa, because you don't really, you're not, that constraint isn't even required for posting information if it's not required to be determined by other information that's already there. So therefore, for data storage, it makes more sense to use a network that offers the capabilities that are really important to us, like decentralization, censorship resistance. Well, I wouldn't even say decentralization. That's more of like a thing, and these characteristics come from that. But I guess immutability, censorship resistance, and the availability for it to be public. And therefore, if you kind of then focus on not worrying about the double spin problem, you can then use a network like Arweave. So that's kind of what our infrastructure does. For anything that's not tokenized, all of those transactions go to Arweave using bundler network. And our infrastructure for that we rolled out a few months ago is called Momoka. And the average transaction cost has gone down to anywhere between 0.0003 cents to 0.0007 cents. And this has been around 1,000 times or so cheaper than what we had in the past, and it's also around 1,000 times more scalable. So it's been a really, really great way for us to kind of get to the point where we can hit Twitter scale. And I think right now we're the numbers that we've tested out and that we're talking about are around 35,000 transactions per second, which is a lot higher than any traditional blockchain can handle. For the DX, I'm going to be actually demoing some of that. So I'm not going to walk through every single one of these one by one. I'm just going to like talk about this slide here, and then we're going to start writing some code. But the main ways that you're going to interact with Lens are going to be typically using either the API or one of our SDKs. So the Lens API I talked about already. It's a GraphQL API. The Lens SDKs, we have a React and a JavaScript SDK. We also have widgets, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. And then we have a React Native UI kit that allows you to really just quickly get up and running with React Native. But beyond those things, we actually have also something called our BigQuery tables. And this just enables you to query the entire state of the entire network forever. Any transaction that's ever happened is stored here. And you can pretty much get anything that you want from here. This is a really great way to build stuff like recommendation algorithms and analytics dashboards and stuff like that. It's essentially indexed the entire network there, and we have like 65 or 70 different tables that you can query from. So most of the people that are building recommendation algorithms and stuff on Lens are using BigQuery. That way you don't have to index all of the chain yourself. So I'm going to skip over a bunch of stuff because we only have 12 more minutes. And what I want to do is build a couple of applications, and maybe I'll post something here in just a moment. But we have a CLI that creates a Lens app. It's just called npx create Lens app. This is a great place to get started for a hackathon or something like that, because it not only gives you all of the boilerplate needed to use the SDK, but it also has some like really light design already implemented. So I'm going to call this Lens Workshop or something like that. And then you get the option to choose between 3 different apps. We have a basic app. This just has the SDK and a really generic, almost Next.js boilerplate-esque looking design, but with everything you need to kind of start writing additional code. We have an opinionated one that kind of gives you some design to start with. And then we have a PWA version, which is a progressive web app, similar to like what Friendtech did in terms of the infrastructure or the architecture. And that's what I'm going to start with here. And then I'm also going to create another separate Lens app using the basic boilerplate. So I'm going to create 2 different apps. And I'm going to start by going into the Lens workshop. And I'm going to go to Wallet Connect. And I'm going to grab a project ID. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of look at this app real quick. So this is a Next.js app set up with Tailwind, ShadCN, and Next.js, like I said, Next.js app. And then the only thing we need to do is set like a .env.local for our Wallet Connect ID. And then we can run npm run dev. And this will get us started with a responsive PWA. That's not how much ETH I have, by the way. That's an error. Okay, here we go. So it's a pretty decent design to start off with, and I think like if you also consider that a lot of people at hackathons don't focus on design because honestly, like how much time do you have? You don't have that much time. Just having some design though will set you so far apart that I've seen people literally win hackathons just because they had a slightly better design than everyone else. So ways to implement a good design in a short amount of time are to utilize libraries like ShadCN UI. So go check that out if you haven't already. But I suck at design, and I was able to put this together in a fairly short amount of time. I think it was like a few hours. And it's already responsive and everything like that. If you go to connect your wallet, it already set up with Wallet Connect. And once you're signed in, you have a profile and stuff like that. This is using the Lens SDK. So if I go into the code, you can see where the SDK was configured here in the Lens provider. So this is kind of the boilerplate that you need to use to set up a Lens app. You're essentially setting up the Lens React Web SDK along with a connector, which means the ability to kind of like implement some existing SDK, could be Ethers, but in our case it's WAGMI, to enable like Lens to have the state injected as React context, kind of. And this is all you kind of need to do, and this is all documented, but instead of having to write all that yourself, you can, again, start with one of these boilerplates to start off with. But what I want to do is actually build something like this from scratch. And instead of like having all of these things already done for me, I want to show you how you might do that yourself. And we're going to do that using this other boilerplate here. And I'm going to take the .env local file and just copy it here because we're also using Wallet Connect to get set up. I'm just going to refresh this. All right, so this is the basic boilerplate. This doesn't give you anything really other than connected with Wallet Connect along with sign in with Lens. And right now I'm already signed in from a previous session, I guess. But signing in with Lens will give you the ability to then post to the Lens network using an access token, which is managed for you by our SDK, but you need that access token to interact. And instead of having to kind of like set local storage and cookies and sessions and all that stuff, the SDK just does all that for you, which is pretty nice. But if I go to, if I sign out, you'll see that we have 2 links here at the top, one to go home and one for publications. And once I've connected my wallet and or signed in with Lens, then you'll see that we have a profile page. And what I'm using for profile and publications are the Lens widgets, which is another library that I'm going to show you now. Somehow got disconnected. Let me try this again. We have 5 more minutes. I think we'll be all right. So we have a profile, and then we have publications. What I'm going to do real quick is just kind of show you what that code looks like. For profile, we're using the profile widget, which is literally 2 lines of code where we import it here and we render it here with the handle. The handle is something that we are getting from another React hook called useSession, which basically once you're signed in, you have that session available and you can get the profile handle, profile ID, anything about the signed-in user that you'd like. But the only thing you need to pass in to the profile component is the handle. And you can also import like a theme, and then you can theme that component. So we're going to change the dark theme, and you have the dark theme, and that button actually, oh yeah, I know. Change that prop there. Anyway, there's a bunch of props you can pass in to kind of style that. The other page we're looking at is publications. Publications are importing the publication hook, and we're importing the publication widget. We're using the explore publications hook to get the array of publications, and we're rendering them by mapping over them. But we have this view here built using only 31 lines of code, pretty much, which is pretty nice. But again, we want to build something like this from scratch. What I'm thinking of is like, when you think about Twitter, you have 2 main feeds. You have the feed that shows you like the stuff that's coming to you. And then you have which is a publications feed. And then you have like a profile feed, where if you go to followers, and you can see the followers and the following. We already have the feed of publications. So what I want to do is like render a feed of actual like users. And what I can do is write that code using another one of the hooks along with another one of the widgets. So I'm just going to delete everything here, and we're going to import something called use. Let me go ahead and just from use explore profiles. And then we can say const data is equal to use explore profiles. And then I want to import this limit type where we can pass in some arguments here. And I'm going to limit it to like 10. And I need to pass in one other. I think maybe order by. And I'll order that by the most followers. And then what we can do is just log this out. And this is a basic recommendation algorithm kind of provided by the Lens API. I need to make this a client-side component. So using that hook, we should be able to go ahead and render the data here. And there you go. We see we have like an array of profiles. And each one of these profiles has everything you would need to build like a social app. You have their handle, their wallet that it's been connected to. You have their interests. You have their profile picture, their cover picture, everything like that. So you can then start building out a design. And the last thing we were going to do, and then we're going to wrap this up because we're basically over on time already, is I'm going to import the profile from the lens widgets, and then I'm going to say data.map, or actually, yeah, data.map. And we're just going to return a profile. And this is going to be the data.handle.fullhandle. Okay, so with that, we should be able to go back here and see that we have now like rendered a list of profiles. Obviously, like this design is probably not something that you would ship and try to, in terms of being a differentiating app or whatever, but you can actually pass in props to modify the design to an extent. But my approach would be instead to go to shadcn UI, and I would go here to the components, and I would see, or maybe I would go to the examples and see, okay, like I want my design to look like this or something like that. And then I would go here to view the code, and I would copy the code, and then I would replace this profile component with the shadcn UI component to have like my own custom design. Anyway, so we're over on time by 1 minute. Just going to talk about the bounties again. 20,000, go to the ETHGlobal website to learn more. If you are not on Lens already, come find me. I have a stack of cards, I think they're back there, where I can give you a Lens handle, and I'm going to give you a couple of extra, thank you, to pass out to your friends as well if you want to give them Lens handles. Thank you.